for you to kind of fill things in, just to kind of play with, life and death things, but yes. And then also to work on our obituary and give you some guidelines on that. So that'll be next week's. And then the week after, we'll do some work on the end of life ethical issues. And then the last week, we'll look at grief. And then happy Thanksgiving. In case you need to grieve to celebrate with them, just kidding. So I want to take time to just say thank Matt and his team here. You guys, I work a lot with them, but I've not had a funeral here since in about 2 months. So we've been very fortunate. But I want to thank you for agreeing to come tonight and they're going to give a little presentation, but really to be here to answer your questions. As I said last week, I don't know all of the particulars, and some of the things you may want might be legal in one state and not in the other. So we want to get any of those questions you have. They'll give you some direction as you go through things. So please introduce yourself, and then I'm going to sit with Matt. He's going to be over here giving you a nice grade.
And heckling me, I said. He's probably going to heckle me tonight. This is wonderful. What a fantastic crowd. It is an honor to be here this evening to speak about the very important topic of funeral pre-planning. My name is Melissa Boris. I am Spicer-Mullikin Funeral Home's pre-arrangement counselor and aftercare coordinator. Many of you here, I'm sure, are familiar with our funeral home. We have been serving our community for 119 years. We have 4 locations: Middletown, Delaware City, Newcastle, and Newark. As aftercare coordinator at Spicer-Mullikin, I work with our families through grief care, through one-on-one meetings. I facilitate several grief support groups. I'm also available to assist families with their post-funeral paperwork. Very few funeral homes have somebody in this role. As Spicer-Mullikin's pre-arrangement counselor, I try to educate our families on the benefits of pre-planning their services. I represent Spicer-Mullikin in educational seminars and attend many of the area expos. Marietta Russum has been in the funeral industry since 1996. Marietta is one of our 4 funeral directors. She's been with Spicer-Mullikin for 12 years. She meets with families when a loss has occurred to plan services for their loved ones. I know many of you here tonight have already come up and said hello to her. I think she knows just about everybody in this room, I think, which is wonderful. Also, I wanted to introduce Matthew Smith, who I think many of you also know Matt, our fearless leader who's here tonight. Through our roles, we have seen what a tremendous difference it can make to plan your services ahead of time. That's why we're here this evening to talk about this very important topic. This presentation is probably going to take about 10 minutes, and in this presentation we will probably cover the majority of the questions that you may have. Afterwards, we'd like to have a question and answer session. I feel like that's when the most information comes out, and I think it's wonderful for you all to hear other questions that people are asking. It could be something that you haven't thought about before. It's very difficult for families at the time of a loss to deal with their grief and have to scramble to get together the details that are needed for your services. We understand certain conversations can be uncomfortable, but I can assure you that talking about these things will ease the minds of your loved ones, even if they don't want to discuss the details. Why does making arrangements in advance make sense? Most importantly, it will remove the emotional burden on your family. Pre-planning will give you the control to make your own personal choices, such as whether or not you want a burial or cremation. Do you want a funeral service, a memorial service, or you may not want a service at all? Who do you want to officiate your service? Do you want your services to take place at a funeral home chapel or at a church? Do you want a public or private service, a viewing or no viewing at all? Do you want the casket to be open, or do you want the casket closed for your service? Do you want an obituary? If so, what would you want it to say? Who would be the person that you would like to have meet with our funeral director at the time of the passing to plan the final details? Setting all of this up in advance eliminates the need for your family to figure these things out on the spot during a very difficult time. So when we meet with families, the majority of our families have the same questions that seem to pop up over and over. So what I've done is tried to narrow it down to the most commonly asked questions. So one of the number one questions that I get, do I have to pay in advance to plan in advance? The answer to that question is no. There are several different options on how and when you pay for your funeral pre-arrangements. You can choose to have your family pay for your services at the time of your passing. You can use an existing life insurance policy. You can pay for it in full. You can make monthly payments and pay over time through a funeral insurance policy that we can provide for you. Number 2, what if I make pre-arrangements and then later change my mind and I want to change the arrangements? That's absolutely no problem. Simply call us. In most cases, it may be just a matter of completing some new documents that reflect your changes. Number 3, can't my power of attorney just make these arrangements later for me? How many people think that's possible? No. I'm kidding.
Power of attorney.
Power of attorney.
Once you pass away, can your power of attorney come in and make arrangements?
Exactly. So Marietta, did you want to talk about that for a minute?
Many individuals who may have power of attorneys, when they come in to meet us, they'll say, oh, well, I have power of attorney for my loved one. Unfortunately, most people aren't aware of this, but the power of attorney ceases upon the last breath. So once the power of attorney is no longer valid, that's where we then require a will. Now, if a family doesn't have a will, but most attorneys, when you go in to make those kinds of arrangements with them, will do a power of attorney, one for health care as well, and then a will. The will is what we would need, and the reason we need that is our Delaware Code of Law, we have a specific order that we have to follow when we meet with a loved one's family. First, it would be if there's a declaration, and that declaration would come into play when you would meet with Melissa, and what that does, that actually supersedes the will. So that gives, in that document, that you would name whoever you would like to make your arrangements. You then will name an alternative person in the event that person is not able to do it or possibly may have passed on or moved away. So it gives you 2 options. So we would be able to work with that individual. In that document, you also would specify the arrangements that you're making with Melissa, and you can either make it so you put it in there and says, I want this to just to adhere to exactly what I'm saying, this is what I want done. Or you can give your loved one flexibility and say, this is what I prefer to have done, but if they should choose to do that. Some families know exactly what they want, and that's what we then have to follow. Same as open casket, closed casket. As far as with this declaration, it talks about your services and where you will be buried. We have it notarized as well too, and that becomes a part of your permanent file at our funeral home. So when the time arises, we pull that document as well as the pre-arrangements that Melissa or whichever funeral director you may have worked with, and we follow up and make all the arrangements with that individual. Now, next in line, if you don't have a declaration, then it becomes the spouse. Now, we often have many individuals that their spouse has already passed away. Then who is the next person to do that? It then defaults to the will. So that's why it's imperative to also have a will. So if you haven't made your pre-arrangements, there's no spouse, then we go by whoever is the executor or executrix. Then it defaults to, after that, it defaults to the majority of adult children. Now, we have families today, unfortunately, not all children get along. The reason that it's so imperative to make these pre-arrangements is one child will say, no, mom told me she wanted to be cremated. The other one then says, no, she wants to be buried and have a casket burial. So then we run into a little tiff between the families. This way, if you come in and make those arrangements, there's no argument. We have to go by what the document specifies there. And Mr. Smith and I both can attest to that. Not all children get along. So if there are 5 children, let's say, we would need signatures of 3 of them, the majority of the adult children, to sign off and to agree with those arrangements. That's extremely imperative when it comes to a family that wants to do cremation. And then it defaults, then we have a list that it goes to next, it then goes down to parents, and then it then defaults to siblings, and then down to if someone else is named. We have instances where there is no other person to name. Then we have other concerns that we have to go through before we can bury that. But that declaration is an extremely important document to have on file. And as far as other arrangements and so forth, oh, yes, sir.
Yes, if we live in Maryland, are those laws very similar?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So it is across state lines there. As long as we have it signed by you and we have it notarized, then that just becomes a part of your permanent file there. But unfortunately, with our society today, we do have concerns with surviving children, or they've been estranged. We have a lot of that today as well too. Yes, ma'am.
Is the declaration through the funeral home, or is that a legal document?
It's a legal document for the funeral home to follow on your behalf.
So I would have to go to an attorney to do a declaration?
No, ma'am.
No, we
Just
do
through
it
the
with
funeral
you.
home.
Oh, it's
We
not-
have that declaration and we have
So
it,
just
you
go
would
with it.
sign it, and that becomes a part of your permanent record on our end.
We
And
have
that's
it
part of the
notarized as well.
Pre-arrangement? Is that
That's part of it, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
And the executor,
Oh, I'm sorry?
so my will is old. My kids are now adults, but when I did my will, they were small children. Can the executor, my brother, say they're adults now and give them the opportunity to make decisions, or is he?
With your brother, if your brother should want to renounce his right as being your executor,
Well, for maybe funeral
he
decisions,
could
like-
designate your children as long as they're over 18. So he could say, I don't want to do this. We then have a letter that he would renounce his right, and then he would then nominate or name whoever he would like to take his place as far as carrying out your wishes.
Do you need a lawyer? I think you need a lawyer to change that though, the executor, if they want to
Oh, no,
denounce.
we have a form that
You
we
can do that
use.
without,
So
okay,
you
good.
don't have to go to an attorney or anything, as long as the individual that has that right of disposition is willing to sign off and to renounce their right for that. Yes, ma'am.
So if you have your will and you don't have anything about the burial in the will,
No, they usually don't, because most individuals, that we encounter as well too, and even when my family members have passed away, sometimes the will, the family can't find right away. And if they can't find it, then they would think, oh, the funeral arrangements are in it, but typically they're not in that, only because we don't want the family, or the family doesn't need to be waiting to make arrangements. So that's why they would come in and make those arrangements with the funeral home. I have seen where they have placed in there just one will that actually did have the funeral arrangements in there. And fortunately, we did follow it because the family found the will. But we have a lot of families. I had a gentleman once couldn't find his wife's will. And he went to probate it, and actually he couldn't probate it because he didn't have the original will. 8 months later, he was talking to his wife's friend and found out that she had taped it to the bottom of her underwear drawer.
That makes sense.
So 8 months, he searched, and her friend knew exactly where it was. He then went, because they ask you to have it probated within 8 months, but they don't hold you to that. But there was the will, and see, that would have been an example had he placed that information in the will.
But if you don't have it in the will, then a family member can make the decision of what to do, how to have the funeral.
Yes, we would follow that right of disposition as to who would have that right to do that, to make those decisions on your behalf. And at our funeral home, we follow that, order that they have there.
And if the executor or executrix is not a family member,
It doesn't have to be.
okay.
Now,
But one of the benefits of coming into pre-plan is you do all this yourself. So you don't have to even worry about any of that, because this is going to be your wishes.
your wishes.
And we'll even have that declaration notarized, so we have legal proof that that is exactly what you wanted for your
So
services.
if your funeral home goes out of business by the time I die.
So Matt, cover your ears.
We've been in
So-
business 119 years so far, so. And if we do, the gentleman over here who owns it, this has been his life's desire. We're not going anywhere.
Yeah,
But
we're
you
not-
have the choice to move it to another funeral home if you should choose to.
Right. So getting back to this, now one of the things when people come in,
I've had a brief conversation with my parents about this, like 1 minute long. They're from South Jersey, and I know my mom even said like she wants a pink casket that says, and a gravestone that says, "Mommy was here," you know. No cremation, whatever. But I asked them, and they said they both want to go back to the Catholic cemetery in Belmar, New Jersey. What are the legalities about that? Can you transfer from Delaware to New Jersey?
Absolutely. We travel there. We make all those arrangements. We can even transport up there. We would be in contact with because we have a Maryland, Delaware, and Pennsylvania licenses. We don't have one in New Jersey. We would just contact a New Jersey funeral home to have them present at the cemetery. But it's certainly not a problem for us to escort, and we've done it many times.
So
New York.
everything would have to happen in New Jersey then, it wouldn't be with our parish here.
It's totally up to you, where you would like to have the services, where we would make arrangements for. So whichever
so
state
you may
it's
maybe
in.
have a service here, but the burial there,
Correct, yes.
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 Oh,
Yep, and typically like that, if it's a distance and there's gonna be a luncheon or something afterwards, family may have like a visitation and the mass in one day. The next day, everyone meet at the cemetery up there, but we can do it all in one day as well too.
okay, cool, thank you.
So when many of our families come in to do the pre-arranging, they'll want to do everything at the same time, get everything taken care of, which would involve prepaying as well. So one of the questions that we get is, what is the benefit of paying in advance? Other than removing the emotional burden from your family, the biggest benefit of paying in advance is that it can save you thousands of dollars. Funeral home and cemetery costs increase every year. That's not just our funeral home, it's an inflationary cost throughout the US. Once you pay for everything in full, whether that's one single payment or one of our payment plans, your funeral services will be locked in and you will not have to pay anything else towards your services or merchandise, no matter how long you live. Now keep in mind, this is specific to our funeral home. Some funeral homes will guarantee pricing like this, others won't. So if you don't use Spicer-Mullikin funeral homes, which we hope you do, of course, but if you don't, then that's a question that you would certainly want to ask. Last question, and this happens quite often. What if I need to apply for Medicaid, or I want to move into a retirement home someday, and I'm told that I need to spend down my assets to qualify? Has anybody gone through the Medicaid spend down process with a family member? Okay, so that does pertain to a lot of people. Is my policy considered an asset? Unlike most insurance policies where you can change your beneficiary to whoever you want, whenever you want, a funeral insurance policy can have the funeral home listed as the irrevocable beneficiary. By law, the funeral home can use the proceeds we receive at any time of death to pay for the cost to cover your arrangement. Since the state looks at that policy as an asset to our funeral home and not you, you will never have to cash out that policy to qualify for Medicaid. And as a matter of fact, we have people call how many times a week? A lot, sometimes almost daily, saying, I was just told that my mom is going on Medicaid and we need to do some sort of special policy and we need to do it tomorrow. That happens all the time. So you won't have to deal with any of that because it will already be taken care of. Okay? So this concludes our presentation. So now we can open it back up to any questions that you may have. Barbara?
If you have prearranged your funeral and actually even prepaid all or part of it, and then let's say your closest family member who lives in another state, for whatever reason, whether it's dementia or health or whatever, moves you to that state, what happens to?
That's an excellent question. I'm glad you asked that. So these policies are in your name. Now, because it's funeral insurance, it's a little bit different than a life insurance policy. It's still a life insurance product, but it's specific to a funeral home to cover just your funeral services. So that policy would be in your name, but it would be assigned to our funeral home. So all these policies, any policy can be assigned to a new funeral home. So let's say that did happen and you moved, you just contact that funeral home, let them know that you would like to change your policy. They will contact the insurance company and they're now the designated funeral home. It's very easy and that can be done anywhere in the United States.
Now, the downside to that would be the other funeral home, the receiving funeral home, would not guarantee your cost, whereas we do. And when we guarantee our cost, it's on the goods and services. The other side of it would be what we call cash advance items. And those are items such as the death certificates, obituary, clergy, church fees, anything of that sort, we can't guarantee because those are outside, especially cemetery fees. They can be quite costly. So we don't guarantee those. However, at our funeral home, we do a proportion as to how much interest is earned, and we apply that to the guaranteed items as well as to the non-guaranteed items. So you do still earn interest on the cash advance items as well.
For the state of Delaware, because I'm not familiar with it, my parents died in Pennsylvania, how many days after a person dies must they be buried? Because Pennsylvania had 10 days, like it was required. Does Delaware have a law like that? And if you have a lot of family from out of town.
To be honest with you, it's a very gray area.
Okay, they don't.
And I'll tell you why. I'll give you an example. The Delaware Veterans Cemetery, they could be 3 weeks out. During COVID, I mean, my goodness, it was 2 months out. And so, again, there's a very gray area there on
That's for military, because that happened with my parents also. They got maybe 10 or 12, 14 days because, you're right, they didn't have a slot for them to be buried. They don't bury on the weekends or government holidays.
As long as you do it within a meaningful time.
Delaware doesn't have a specific number?
Not like that, no, because again, there's no way we would be able to get somebody within a veteran cemetery if that applied all the time. Because we just can't get people in within 10 days like Pennsylvania. That wouldn't, a lot of times that would not work.
Okay.
Is it the same with cremation?
Same with cremation.
If you prepaid and you die in other states, and be better in other states, whatever, do you get the money back?
Oh, yes, because the policy.
The policy would move. So wherever you passed, that funeral home, if you had to use another funeral home.
So if you'll be involved with transportation that states to your funeral home, that's is responsibility of the deceased family, or you guys cover that expense of to be transported body from one place to the other?
So if it was
It'd be
above and
out-of-state.
beyond, so your policy could have made some interest over that time, but if it's beyond the amount of money that you have in your policy, then yes, the family would be responsible for that.
I'm sorry, I lost you on this. When you say my policy, you mean what I signed when I prepaid or my insurance policy?
If you prepaid through one of our policies that we can offer you.
Okay.
Yes,
Cause
Thank
it's
you.
always your
Thank you.
money, not ours.
right.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
it would apply to wherever you were.
Thank you.
So, if you have limited family, who do you notify, or how do you ensure that a person knows there'll be no funeral? So, if it's not in the will, can that be stated in the will, that arrangements have been made through your group funeral home? Because just say the person you have as your executor is in the car with you and you're in a car accident or fatal, and then like nobody knows where anything is. And I do know in Cecil County, for the will, you can pre-register your will, I think it's $5 fee. So if there's problems, like where is there a will, you can go into the, I guess it's registry of wills, and your will is there. But beyond that, how do you tell your primary care, like, hey, if they call you, I'm dead, call us funeral home? I mean, I'm not sure.
It is good to let people know. And a lot of people don't have family, but I mean, if you have friends or coworkers or neighbors, it's always good to let them know that you're prearranged through us. Whoever you're closest with.
Do you have your own cremation facility?
We do.
Spicer-Mullikin?
It's in our Middletown location.
So it's nice to know that you always stay within the comfort of our care.
Yes, that's what I was asking.
Yes, sir, and that's at our newest facility right in Middletown. Now, one other thing, how many state employees do we have in here, or retired? Okay, here's another wonderful benefit if you prearrange. If you make the funeral home the beneficiary, you don't pay the tax on it. It's a $7,000 death benefit. Spouses through the state of Delaware are required to pay in 20% because it's a benefit, it's not an insurance policy. Most people think it's an insurance policy, but anything with a benefit is taxable. So if it's $7,000 and the spouse is the beneficiary, they automatically take $1,400 out and you get $5,600. Now, if someone else is a beneficiary, they can name the amount that they would like to have taken out for the tax consequence on it. So that's one of the other main reasons with prearranging is making whichever funeral home you would like the beneficiary, and there's no tax consequence on that.
I'm a retired state employee for the state of Maryland, but now I live in Delaware.
That's different though. Maryland has a different
Situation.
Yes, ma'am. But this is with the, and you could check actually, so with Maryland though, it was something that they gave to you, you didn't pay into.
I don't know what it was.
Okay, we're just very blessed in the state of Delaware that each retired employee, they have to be retired, gets that $7,000 death benefit.
I would suggest you contact the pensions office. That's something that they would be able to let you know. Yeah, the Maryland Pension Office.
Does that also apply to UD?
Yes.
UD is
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
a weird
Yes.
figure of UD, yeah, I know, okay.
As long as whatever position you were in qualified for that benefit. Some, not all positions
Not all.
would be eligible. So that would be something that you would also, again, want to talk to the pension office about.
Question. Did you say that if somebody came in and paid you for the funeral, for everything, gave you whatever the cost was, paid you cash, and then that person would leave the state and say move to Florida, and they come to you and say, hey, I'd like to have all my cash back, do you give that back to them?
No. So we don't take cash, first of all.
Oh, you don't?
Right, so we are
You gotta take
legally,
a policy.
right, we're legally not allowed to take funds from a
Okay.
family prior to the passing. So that's why they have developed these specific type of funeral insurance policies. So that money would be tied into a policy, and because of that, these funds, this is not an investment tool. So I just wanna make sure everybody's clear on that. We mentioned interest, but I really don't like to talk too much about that because it's not like an investment tool, like a 401k where you're going, or 529 or whatever, you're not going to be making money off of this. The whole point of that is just to hopefully keep up with inflation. There's very little cash value in these policies. You don't wanna start a policy and then cash it out. I would never suggest doing it. It's a different tool. It's a different type of vehicle for your
An
money.
example of this would be, a few weeks ago, I had an individual who had prepaid back in 1997. And the inflation of our charges, because we had a few years of where the interest had taken a dive there, and the interest didn't keep up. So with their goods and services that we guarantee, we're guaranteeing that with their costs that increase, if the interest doesn't keep up with it, you don't pay the difference. And in that particular policy from 1997, we absorbed that difference, which was almost $5,000. So that doesn't happen every day, but this was a family that really thought ahead, prepaid back in the late 90s. So it really benefited them substantially. So they didn't have to pay any charge of any sort. The interest that kept up even paid for the increase in their cemetery.
And that being said, there could also be times where over the years, it's accrued more money than the funeral services. There's families who could have pre-planned 20, 25 years ago. They wanted, you know, a huge service, a 2-day traditional burial, and now they just want an immediate burial. They might not have very many friends and family and so forth, and they might downgrade those services a little bit, and they could end up with a surplus, in which case that goes back to your state, and that would be your family.
That's even though you're named as the beneficiary of the policy?
Yes, we only take the funeral amount, the current day funeral amount, whatever that funeral service would cost. So if there is a surplus, then that would go back.
And that varies state by state. An example is in Florida. Florida does not give the interest to the family. The funeral home keeps it. Here in Delaware, the interest goes to the family.
Nice state to live in, if you're
I
dead.
purchased already, but a green burial in Pennsylvania, and I didn't want to be involved. And I didn't know, like, as far as having, I'm assuming you couldn't have a funeral mass if the body's not embalmed. And I don't know about transporting the body, are you limited to what states? Because I said to my husband, I said, we have to retire to Pennsylvania so my body can go. So how familiar are you with that? And like, even though we live in Maryland, when you come to you to make arrangements just to take the body up and bury it, and can there be a funeral mass with that?
I couldn't hear it.
I'll let Matt answer that.
I heard you pretty good. So you're asking about green burial, and if you can, I think I'm hearing, can you go across state lines?
Yeah.
Unembalmed?
Unembalmed.
Yes, you can.
But you're asking, that's what I was confused about. Are you saying that you would want to have a service as well?
Well, no, so I didn't know because I was assuming with the green burial, you know, it's just kind of a shroud and you're in the ground. There's no vault, there's no whatever, that's the whole thing of it, and you're not involved.
Correct.
But then that also, not that I want a viewing but could you have like
Could you have a massive Christian burial?
the old time wooden box and have a massive Christian burial?
Yes.
And then just be put right into your green pot?
You can have a massive Christian
Absolutely.
burial unembalmed. Absolutely. You do not have to be embalmed in order to have a mass at church. You know, a lot of green burials, people are placed in almost these wicker type caskets.
I saw.
You can have that here at Mass. Sure. We make sure everything is taken care of as far as that's concerned. up into the day of burial. So that short amount of time is not gonna be an issue.
So that would be considered an immediate burial, so it would happen fairly quickly, I'm assuming.
No, not necessarily, because we have to work on burial permits and things before we can do things. So therefore, by law, when embalming does not take place, and I say this very, very kindly from the bottom of my heart, but just being transparent, refrigeration has to be done up until that point.
Okay.
Same thing with cremation. If you're being cremated, the loved one is in refrigeration up until we're able to obtain the cremation permit and move forth with cremation. Something new that has come up is called terramation. And that is softly, that is a word softly, what it is it's human composting. So people think if you're not embalmed that you can't go across straight lines. We can fly somebody unembalmed to another state. In our experience, when folks talk to folks, I think sometimes they get, and this is what today is all about, try to get facts straight that might be confusing, or somebody might have heard something that actually isn't factually true.
Well, I had spoken to a funeral director in Pennsylvania, and I'd spoken to my priest at the time, and I thought I had everything lined up, and then I was looking online and I read that Maryland will transport a unembalmed body across state lines, but Pennsylvania you cannot. And I thought, well, will they accept me coming in, but they just won't let me go out?
Well, you can't bring an unembalmed body across from Pennsylvania. We do it all the time.
So then maybe the website is not.
Yeah, it's hard to think that, because what if somebody is Jewish in religion? And, they're coming from Pennsylvania, so, no, you can't require somebody to be embalmed just because they're coming over state lines. It's not uncommon to think that. We get that question quite often, believe it or not, that people think that, but it's not necessarily true.
And we also hear often if someone's gonna be cremated, they come in and they say, well, I understand I have to be embalmed. That is a misconception as well too. You do not have to be embalmed to be cremated.
Out of curiosity, what's the time frame if you're not gonna be embalmed? Like, how long do you have to have your service before, I would
Well,
imagine that.
As Mr. Smith mentioned, we would have to use, refrigeration at that time. We would like it to be within a timely fashion, naturally, to
Like,
do that.
what's a timely fashion?
Well,
A week?
we've had several that we've had to extend out, but Matt, what would you say would be the best?
Are you asking for cremation?
No, I'm saying if you're not embalmed, like, how much time do you have before if you're gonna have a service that,
Are you asking maybe because there's people coming from out of the country or out of state?
right,
or-
I mean,
I think ideally for anybody, it's good emotionally to have services within some kind of a traditional time frame. But there are plenty of circumstances where we have to hold a loved one for 3-4, again, Delaware Veteran Cemetery. It could be Arlington Cemetery. There could be so many reasons why we can hold somebody. It might not be the norm all the time, but for different situations, we certainly can. We've had to wait for loved ones that are served in the armed forces, and they have to get sent home and things of that nature to be able to attend their mother, their grandparents' funeral. So there's a lot of logistics and reasons why we can hold off.
even if you're not embalmed? Like
Keep 'em in
weeks?
But again, you would be in refrigeration.
Oh, okay, well, I mean, things even get.
Yeah,
bad
and
in
unfortunately during COVID, we had to wait several months
Wow,
for those that didn't wish to be embalmed, but wanted to say go.
right,
Go. Again, the Veteran Cemetery, I keep using as an example because they're one of the ones that can get reserved backwards, where on traditional cemeteries, you would be able to have a funeral within 3 or 4 or 5 days. But any veteran cemetery is always going to be a little bit different.
What's the advantage of embalming? What advantage do you have by
It's a
embalming?
temporary preservation.
Well,
It's
he said
actually
right
what
now,
it
if you're put on ice, you don't have that.
That's for when folks wanna have a viewing.
Right.
That's the general purpose for embalming, is to preserve the loved one, again, could be two weeks before a loved one's viewed. So that helps
For the best appearance and so forth.
slow down the natural decomposition opposed to what refrigeration does. Just being transparent.
It's just
To
a
answer your
temporary
question.
form of preservation.
So if I come in and do a very specific declaration, so you know exactly what I want, in the processes of what you have to obtain, like these permits that were mentioned, scheduling with the parish, what is the longest holdup? And is there anything you can do to make sure that that's all in place? So like, in the ideal circumstances, if you know everything someone wants, has the declaration, what is the normal turnaround time and what's the longest holdup? And is there something you can do to have that in place, so there's no glitches?
A holdup as far as, what do you mean?
I come into, I do a declaration, I know exactly what I want, I die, the hospital notifies you, you come pick up the body, and now you have to notify the church, do a funeral mass, and I guess, permission for, I guess, to have to do.
Oh, so you're asking what the typical time frame is? That would be a funeral director question. A week? Within a week,
That can
maybe?
depend on several factors, but to answer it, if I met with a family on Monday and say it was this church in All Saints Cemetery, as long as the cemetery could do it and the church could do it, we could do it as quickly as Wednesday.
Okay, that's it.
We could also hold off based upon a favorite priest. They wanna wait for a favorite priest to get back from vacation. So, we might have, which has happened, so we might have to wait a week. So no, we really try to accommodate exactly what the family wants. Yeah.
Does the document called 5 Wishes hold up the same way legally as a declaration?
No.
No. Somebody just asked me about that the other day. Isn't that something that's just online right
It's something
now?
that, like hospices and other
Yeah.
places, you'll just,
They give away.
it's more of a guide. The declaration is through the state of Delaware, through the Professional Board of Funeral Regulations. It's created for our state. You can go right on to and Google it and find it right in the state of Delaware Funeral Code. It is a legal document, again, as Marietta said, very long time ago, that supersedes everything else. But it definitely is not the same thing as that document.
5 Wishes, I think, would be something that if you don't have any kind of funeral plan, it might be nice to leave that for your family so they had an idea of what
Right.
you wanted, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not very familiar with the document, but from what I'm hearing, that would be something that you would want to do if you did not come in to do this. So if you come in to prearrange, you get copies of every single document you sign with some other information. It's all in a nice packet. You would want to let your loved ones know where that is. That declaration would definitely be in that packet. So even if you haven't involved your loved ones, your children, in this decision or discussed it much, because a lot of kids, even grown kids, they do not want to talk about it. They'll say, thank you, Mom and Dad, for doing this, but I don't want to discuss it. It's upsetting to talk about, but it's always good to let them know where that is. They don't have to have it, of course, because we would have it. All they would have to do upon your passing is call us and we would have everything. But I think it's really a nice thing for the kids to see, or any other loved ones that would be involved in the process, that's your handwriting, those are your wishes, that's your document, so they know your wishes are being honored. Barbara?
That's something also the doctor's offices always ask for.
They do.
They wanna know to what extent their care is when you're dying, you know.
Absolutely.
You want, anything, you want life support or just to be let go.
And kind of talking about what you were just saying there, today's children are different than when we were growing up as well too, with the vital statistical information. Most of the time when I would ask them, because the mother's maiden name is on the death certificate, they don't even know their grandmother's first name.
Mom,
She was
Mom.
called Mama.
Yeah, Mom, we get that all the time. Mom had a last name?
Yeah, and she had a first name, so
Right.
they don't know a first name, let alone her maiden name. And it's hard for children to know where to find the social security number for mom or dad.
Right.
So this is why it's really important that someone has that information.
So is there like a checklist of, like, what information you need to leave on an index card to give to you for the death certificate?
Well,
When you come in to pre-arrange, that's what we'll do with you.
information.
We have a form that we use, that everything from that form will eventually be used for that, all of your biographical information. So again, as Marietta was just stating, it's really the easiest thing to come in and do that yourself. That can be really hard for adult kids, as Marietta said, to know where documents are. Like if somebody was in the military, I've heard of families crawling around in an attic going through boxes trying to find discharge papers. All of that you can do ahead of time. It's nice and neat in your file, safely stored away, and everything is together that's going to be needed. It saves a lot of
Melissa?
headache.
So, just to your point, one of the exercises we're gonna do next week is a form that will have all that basic information, not every single detail, but enough that, you know, you could, so we're gonna work on that next week as part of our next week's process. So, that way you would know what kind of information you wanna be passing. So-
Perfect. No, that's great.
And that brings me to another question also. How many veterans do we have in here? Does your family know where your Form DD 214 may be located?
In the safe.
Okay, which is your discharge paper. Please make sure that your family knows where that copy is, especially if you want to be buried like at the Veterans Cemetery, because that document is needed to get you pre-approved. If you meet with Melissa, she can go ahead and get you and your spouse both pre-approved, but that document is extremely important to have.
There's a question right here. Yeah.
I wanna just offer a comment. My mother died before my father was a veteran. We did not know that my father had to choose his type of burial, whether it was cremation or in a casket, before they could put my mother in first. So for those of you who are veterans, your relationships with your spouses, it took 4 months for my dad to make that decision. How long did we wait for my mother, who was cremated, to finally be buried? She died in November, and she was finally at the Delaware Veterans Cemetery in June.
That's a very good.
So the
That's a great comment.
The couples
Very good
need
point.
to know, because they will further delay.
They will.
And what we do is, when we meet with a family, we ask, what is the spouse's intention for burial? And we designate that. Let's say the first person is gonna be cremated. We need to make sure, if they wanna do the burial right away, is the spouse gonna be cremated as well? Cause that does determine where the burial takes place at the Veterans Cemetery, either in the ground, in their urn section for both of them, or they also have the section where the husband or wife or whatever buried one on top of the other. They do have the columbariums out there, however, they are almost full. And at the moment, I don't know of any plans, do you, Matt, that they've been working on adding more columbariums out to the cemetery?
So my second question was actually wanted to be directed to Father Ed. When my husband passed, it was Palm Sunday.
So that's a good question, because I was gonna make that point earlier. There are certain times of the year, so let's just say you died on Easter Monday, well, your funeral is not gonna be that week.
No, right.
Right, because of the holidays, but the sacredness of Holy Week and Easter. So So they would be another example of things that might extend it a little bit. And so also around Christmas and Thanksgiving. So certain holidays, you know, you might just, there might be a little waiting to do because either you're not gonna get a minister.
Correct.
Because of commitments, or even can't find a church. Or in a cemetery.
Correct.
So yes, certain times of the year, and we can't control that.
Right.
That would be one of those circumstances that would delay when things could take place.
We had a brother-in-law that passed January.
The girl
and it
asked.
was freezing. They could not dig the grave until March. So, I mean, that's another holdup too, is the weather. They said that they needed to wait because, and I forget where the cemetery was, where he was buried. But they held on to his body for a few months because the ground was frozen solid, they couldn't do anything. So that's also a reason why things can be.
Was that in Delaware?
That was in Delaware.
Really? Wow. It doesn't happen too often, I understand, it must have been a really cold winter, respectfully. You know, that happens more commonly upstate, like, you know, getting towards upstate New York, Canada, cause a lot of these companies actually have machines that can heat the earth in levels to still be able to, but again, you are correct, it can happen, but luckily in Delaware that doesn't happen too often. I'm sad that that happened for you, that you had to wait so long. But yeah, it's a possibility. You are not wrong. Absolutely.
If someone comes in and works with you on a declaration, you said the burial plot is a separate expense, but is that something that you can guide them also to determine if that's something they also want to pre-purchase?
So the burial plot you would not purchase through us.
Right.
You would need
But
to
I
do
mean,
that
as
through the
far as
cemetery.
conversation and determining, I know St. Joseph's has a cemetery.
Oh, you mean suggestions
Yeah,
for cemeteries?
suggestions for-
Absolutely,
That's
absolutely,
all
we can.
part of-
And
Yes.
I couldn't say strong enough, if you know you're gonna be buried, to get your plots ahead of time, because the burden on those who are left behind if you wait. There's another thing that can really delay services, is not having those ahead of time, and with all the emotional stress now trying to determine at that moment, where do we want mom, where do we want dad, and that can be a struggle, sometimes.
And again, if you were to come in, you know, to add to that, if you were to come in and make a plan, that would be something that you would wanna put on your contract, what those opening and closing costs would be. That would be something that we would need to know when we meet. It's very helpful to be able to add that on if you wanna have a good estimate of what your costs would be.
I'm not sure if you have the data for this question, but you touched on a lot of the unknowns that could occur, like cemetery costs, church costs. If I were to sign up this evening, and then in 5 years my wife called and said, come and pick this guy up.
We would be right there.
What, yeah. I'm sure you would. I'm wondering what the trend is for these unknowns. Like, can you project in 5 years, is it minimal what that increase to the contract would be?
So when we do your costs, we have to do today's costs. So
Right.
the amount of your policy should be the same amount as your funeral estimate for those costs. So again, that's what we were talking about. These policies will grow a bit with inflation, so that does help pad a little bit of that cost.
And your question is, what's the inflation gonna be?
Yeah.
So you
Oh,
can
you're
say-
asking about inflation, Matt?
I don't know an average. I
Yeah,
can
that
tell you
would-
Spicer-Mullikin average. I don't know a nationwide average.
Okay.
You know, that really all depends, but it's normally between $100 and $200 a year.
Okay. And the reason I was asking is we sat with another funeral business and they gave us what they considered a firm quote, and it included all these costs and said, you know, we're locked in. And I thought that was a little strange because 10 years from now, you know, cemetery cost is gonna be much different from
Right.
today.
That's That's correct, and I don't know of any funeral home, you can call and ask them that, now that you've got this information,
Yes.
you could call and ask them that. Matt, have you ever heard of anybody locking in cash advances? I have not.
No.
Right, I haven't.
The reason is
It would be
because
very
we can't
dangerous.
guarantee
We
how
can't
much a third party is gonna inflate their charges, so I can't risk, so let's say you go to All Saints Cemetery and their opening and closing today is 2,000 and that's what you pre-fund now. And you pass away in 5 years and now it's 2,500. We can't guarantee their charges. So the family would be responsible for that. Mel normally at her prearrangements will tell we'll normally recommend every 5 years, come to us
Yes.
and see if there's any, you can put more money in as you go. So let's say in 5 years, you call us and say, we just wanna bring our funeral up to speed. You can take that $500 and bring the cash advance side up. But I always say this, worst case scenario, if that's what somebody did and all a child owes is $500.
They would be thrilled.
It's gonna be much better off than owing 15,000 because nothing's done in advance, so. Unfortunately, we can't, I wish I could, we take the risk of, locking in our charges, yes, but we can't do that for third parties.
Can't you pre-plan with the cemetery?
Some
As far as buying your
cemeteries.
lots in advance and everything, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Some cemeteries allow you to prepay your opening and closing in advance, not many.
No.
I know one off the top of my head is Grace Lawn Memorial Park in Newcastle. So if anybody has plots there and you've never done, you can do that, and pay your, whatever the opening and closing of for your cremation or your traditional burial.
And they've only been doing that for a few years, correct? Where you
Yes.
can prepay the opening and closing, so a lot of families don't know that you can do that now.
Right.
And they can even put you on payment plans as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
You guys have spoken about cremation, and I think you said termination?
Terramation.
It was just passed, I'm sure somebody in here has read it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was just passed in Delaware.
What
not too long
about
ago.
aquamation?
That is not, it's
It's not in
alkaline
Delaware.
hydrolysis is not legal in Delaware.
Yeah, but it is in several other states.
Oh, it is in other states, yes.
Can you explain what it is and what the difference would be?
So, again, I always try to use words that are very delicate. It's flameless cremation. So, you were cremated via a water solution.
Chemicals?
Yes.
Okay.
So it
The
eats.
difference is
eats
no
up your
flame,
body
the
instead of
difference
burning.
is no flame.
Catholic cemeteries in Newcastle County, which is All Saints, and then, I know there's another one, I think it's
I missed the
Sorry, what was
question.
the question?
What was the question?
The Catholic cemeteries in Newcastle County, because I'm from Pennsylvania, and that's where my.
They are Cathedral in Wilmington, All Saints in Wilmington, also kind of near Newark. Some people think it's Newark area, Kirkwood Highway, and then Gates of Heaven down in Sussex County. Those are the three.
There's none in Kent.
Oh, forgive me, there's one more. I shouldn't forget little old Delaware City.
Right.
There is New St. Paul Cemetery in Delaware City. It's very tiny, so forgive me for forgetting that
And then
one.
just over the line into Maryland, there's Old Bohemia Cemetery as well too, but that one's in Maryland.
That is Maryland, yeah.
Did you have a
There's
question?
St. John's Holy Angels on Elton Road, right?
No.
Okay, no. At West Park and Elton Road, there's no fee. There's St. John's Holy Angels Cemetery.
St. John's?
St. John's Holy Angels, which is a
Oh, in
Catholic.
Delaware City?
No, it's in Newark. It's right
Oh,
at
yes, right on the
Elton Road
corner.
and West Park.
Right on the corner.
From your place, and across the street, it's actually two locations.
That's considered a parish, not it's not under the diocese.
So it's at St.
Oh, I
John's.
thought she just asked about Catholic cemeteries.
Yes, but they were looking at the big ones. Some parishes have one, St. Joseph and the Brandywine, Immaculate Conception has one, St. John Holy Angel. So there are a number of, Old Bohemia really belongs to St. Joseph in Middletown. So there are a number of Catholic cemeteries, but they're parish designated.
You have to be a member.
Forgive me, when she had said Catholic cemeteries, I was thinking under the diocese, which is actually named Catholic cemeteries. So that's what I was referring to when I answered that question, so. There of course are other small parish cemeteries, yes.
Is there a cost differential between the regular cremation and this water chemical cremation? I'm just curious.
I'm not familiar with what the alkaline hydrolysis charges are because again, it's not legal in Delaware.
Oh.
So I don't know what other funeral homes are charging for those services. I would like to think it would probably generally mirror traditional cremation.
And I think some of you missed it. There was a question earlier up here if there was a cost to come in and pre-plan with us. There is not. There is no charge to do that if anybody had an interest in doing that.
I was just gonna say, sidebar conversations are making it hard for us.
Yeah, it's getting a little.
Like, we're not hearing the questions inside.
Okay.
I have a question for Father Ed. All of the cemeteries are not diocesan then, so Immaculate Conception in Elton is owned by the Immaculate Conception Parish?
Generally, yes. So they're managed through the parishes.
Okay,
Can you
so-
get into those? I don't know the answer to them. I would say call that parish.
So
And there's a number.
who is in charge of the upkeep? So if Immaculate Conception was ever closed, is your cemetery just overgrown?
No, but then, that's a good point for any church. So we know that in recent years, Christ, our King, closed. So whatever was there was taken care of and the property was sold. All the records then get moved to a specific place where the diocese determines. So if there was a cemetery, it would get assigned to the nearest parish or whatever. And that would be set up somewhere. So they wouldn't be abandoned if a parish closed.
So someone is still taking care of the one down in Warwick, Maryland?
Yes, that's the one that's Old Bohemia. So that is being taken care of. And I don't know how you get into those cemeteries because I'm not aware of them. But I would just say any parish, they belong to the diocese because every church belongs to the diocese, but they're taken care of on site.
Just push me, open that up, get someone, you see the hole in the heaven.
Sorry, I can't hear.
The member expectations was very large, and when the cemetery was rolled out, he was the contact person that sold plots. You do not have to be a member of the cemetery if you want to buy a plot at the church.
Ed?
Talking about cemeteries, I don't know how many people are familiar with veterans in the veteran cemetery. Two things, the reason that it takes so long to get in there is they only do 4 burials a day, as you know, and they do about almost 1,100 a year now in Delaware. But the good news is that that's a benefit, you don't pay the veteran, you don't pay for the veteran's grave, you don't pay for the marker.
Nope.
And for the last 15 to 18 years, to bury the spouse of a veteran is only $500. So compared to a traditional cemetery, it's quite a difference, but it is a benefit, it's not something that the veteran has, or family has to pay for.
The state fireman's, death benefit?
Yes, sir.
Where does that?
That is also
Working on it.
$7,000 that you can use towards your services there. And we do have certain items that are included in that with the 7,000, but they will pay up to 7,000. Let's say you were cremated, however, you can have an urn and so forth, but that the rest of the balance does not come back to the family. It stays in the fund.
So I'll explain that a little bit better. So if you're, first off, to qualify for that, you have to be 10 years active or more, and that's not only firefighters, that's ladies auxiliary as well. If you have paid 10 years active years, and it does not have to be consecutive, but you've paid 10 years of dues or more, you will qualify for that benefit. What Mary was trying to say is if the policy is 7,000 and your funeral only comes to 5, the family does not keep that 2. The state doesn't allow that. They retain it in their funds.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's just what she was trying to explain, yes. Totally different from the state employee benefit, yes.
One more question, because we're out of time. Go ahead,
I
last
just
question.
wanted to share with, pre-purchasing a plot, I know my husband and I were concerned with the cost and overbeat. But the cemetery we purchased in, like my grandparents, many relatives are in there. At the time that my father was buried, there were like no restrictions. But now they have limited real estate, and unless you have someone, unless you have family buried there, you can no longer purchase a plot there. So if you like know you wanna be somewhere specific, you might want to insure ahead of time. Also, we could prepay for the opening and closing, but if it happened on a weekend, there was a premium that the family would charge because it would be a weekend rate, I guess. So we were at the cemetery where you could prepay the opening and closing and, with the exception of the weekend incident. And that because of limited real estate, unless you have family buried in that cemetery, you no longer could make these properties.
And they designate on the contract weekday. When you prepay that, they put weekday, so that way it specifies.
Can we have a applause for Marietta and Melissa?
I want to give an applause to all of you for all your wonderful questions, because this is very unique to every individual. And of course, it's hard to cover everything because we could honestly be here for a very long time. So again, I just want to thank all of you for all your wonderful detailed questions. They were great. Thank you.
Come ready to work next week.